The backhoe's bucket halted abruptly in mid-swing as it struck the solid concrete barrier I had erected across the pathway. The entire crew fell quiet. One worker quickly shut down the engine. Another instinctively reached for his phone, as anyone might in that moment. On one side of this newly poured wall lay my orchard, featuring orderly rows of apple trees, carefully laid irrigation tubing, and my handmade sign declaring, "Private property, no shortcut, no public park." On the opposite side were 3 residents from Maple Hollow Estates dressed in casual athletic wear, a double stroller nearby, and HOA President Barbara Keene, clad in a bright coral blazer paired with pristine running shoes that had clearly never seen a job. She glared at the 4-foot-high concrete obstruction that now completely cut off the HOA's designated community walking trail from the remainder of my orchard. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice dripping with anger. I emerged from behind a row of Honeycrisp trees, brushed the dirt from my hands onto my jeans, and gestured toward the barrier. "That," I responded evenly, "is what you call a property line." The foreman rubbed his forehead in confusion. "Miss Keene, ma'am, we can't continue poring over this. He's got survey markers placed right in the center. The inspector is going to flag this big time. You cannot simply obstruct a community amenity." Barbara shot back at me. "This trail is integral to the Maple Hollow lifestyle package." I raised a thick folder filled with approved permits, official plat maps, and the certified letters I had previously sent them. At the very top sat the newly issued TRO, a temporary restraining order prohibiting trespassing and any further construction. "The funny thing about lifestyle packages," I noted calmly, "is that they don't override recorded deeds or valid court orders." Barbara jabbed a perfectly manicured finger in my direction, her hand shaking with rage. "We're going to sue you," she declared fiercely. "I've already filed my counterclaim," I answered, "and I've got photos of your unauthorized sidewalk cutting straight through my Granny Smith trees." Right on cue, my attorney's SUV appeared at the gate along the road, followed closely by a county vehicle. A code enforcement officer stepped out, his gaze immediately fixed on the incomplete HOA concrete that extended onto my property. He let out a slow, drawn-out whistle. "Oh boy," he said deliberately, "they're really not going to like this report. My name is Mark Dempsey. I'm 50 years old, a widower, and I make my living growing apples. The Dempsey Orchard lies just beyond the town limits in Brookside County. 50 acres of trees, an old weathered farmhouse, a barn that carries the scent of hay mixed with engine oil, and a roadside stand offering cider, fresh donuts, and whatever specialty items my niece talks me into branding as artisanal. The place has belonged to my family for 3 generations. My grandfather planted the original trees himself. My father installed the irrigation system and expanded the operation. I returned after college when he fell ill and never left. For most of my life, the surrounding land consisted of open fields, dense woods, and a winding creek. Then the developers arrived, as they inevitably do, wearing sharp suits, flashing wide smiles, and tossing around terms like amenities and upscale rural living. They purchased the parcels to the west and north of my orchard and built a subdivision, named Maple Hollow Estates, an ironic choice, given that they cleared out nearly all the actual maples. Each home was some variation of a costly beige structure with stone accents. They erected an elaborate stone entrance sign, created a retention pond they marketed as a water feature, and, most significantly, formed an HOA. Enter Barbara Keene, in her late 40s, with an aggressively highlighted bob haircut, always attired as if attending a PTA meeting that could turn into a power grab. She rose to HOA president faster than anyone expected. Barbara cherished 3 things above all: group emails starting with "per the CC and Rs," phrasing that referred to our community footprint as though orchestrating a major expedition, and the notion of Maple Hollow residents enjoying carefully curated outdoor activities. Her challenge was that the only real outdoor option within Maple Hollow was looping endlessly around their retention pond. Then her gaze shifted to my orchard, my gravel access road, and the grassy strip running alongside my southern fence near the creek. In her view, Maple Hollow's boundaries didn't stop at the recorded plat, they extended wherever her residents needed space for their brisk power walks. I was unfortunately about to discover what happens when an HOA president concludes that your property is secretly part of hers. It began with an email that never should have reached me. Barbara accidentally carbon copied the wrong address on a proposal for Maple Hollow Estates community enhancements. My niece Lily, who manages our orchard's email account, opened it, read through the entire document, and then hurried into the barn where I was repairing a sprayer. "You have to see this," she said, worry evident in her tone. The attached PDF was a triumph of vague, flowery language. Phase 1. Maple Hollow Walking Network, a scenic crushed stone trail linking cul-de-sacs to natural features. Including the adjacent historic orchard property, it included diagrams, colorful arrows, and labels such as Future Scenic Overlook that pointed straight into my tree rows. I examined the map closely. Every natural feature they emphasized was situated on my land, not theirs. Absolutely not, I stated firmly. We figured basic respect for property lines and common sense would end the matter. How naive that was. 2 weeks later, I returned from delivering crates in town to discover orange survey flags strung along my southern fence inside my fence. A pair of workers in safety vests were spray painting lines on my grass near the creek. "Can I help you, folks?" I inquired. "Walkway project," one replied offhandedly. "HOA hired us. Easement's supposed to run right through here." "Easement?" I echoed. "Show me." They produced a laminated HOA map that bore a striking resemblance to Barbara's PDF. "Got a recorded easement from the county to back that up?" I pressed. They exchanged blank looks. I politely escorted them off my property and contacted the county recorder's office. After being transferred several times, I received confirmation. No such easement existed on my parcel. My deed was clear, no rights of way except for the drainage ditch at the rear. So I drafted a courteous letter to the Maple Hollow HOA. "Dear Maple Hollow Board, the land west and south of your subdivision, including the orchard and creek bank, is private property owned by Dempsey Orchards, Incorporated. We have not granted, and will not grant, an easement for a community walkway. Please refrain from sending contractors or residents onto our property. Any future trespassing will be documented and addressed accordingly. Sincerely, Mark Dempsey." I mailed it, emailed it, and even hand-delivered a copy to the HOA mailbox at their community pavilion, grandiose name for what was essentially an oversized gazebo. Barbara's reply was a light-hearted 3-paragraph email. "Mark, I believe there's a misunderstanding regarding the vision. The walking path represents a community benefit that will surely attract more customers to your orchard stand. It's truly a win-win situation. We'll keep you informed as planning advances. Warmly, Barbara Key, All Hollow HOA President." Planning advances apparently meant disregard your letter and proceed regardless. Construction began on the Maple Hollow side. Initially, they poured a concrete sidewalk that followed their rear property line before veering toward the chain link fence separating us. Then, on one overcast Monday, I heard the unmistakable beeping of heavy machinery near the creek. I hopped into my truck, drove along the edge off the road, and there it was. A section of the chain link fence had been cut and folded open. A skid steer was tearing up my grass within the orchard boundaries, carving a route toward my second most valuable row of Honeycrisps. "Hey!" I shouted, jumping from the truck. "Shut that down." The operator turned off the engine. A man wearing a Maple Hollow polo shirt waved a rolled blueprint. "We've got approval from Maple Hollow," he stated assuredly. "You don't have approval from the person who actually owns this land," I countered. "Get your equipment off my property," he shrugged. "Take it up with the HOA, buddy. We're just following the plan." I dialed the sheriff's non-emergency number. By the time a deputy arrived, Barbara had naturally appeared, clutching a binder and behaving as if she had single-handedly pioneered concrete. "This trail is outlined in the community master plan," she explained to the deputy. "Our website promotes it. Buyers were assured walkable access to the creek and orchard. A website doesn't supersede my deed," I pointed out. The deputy, clearly wishing he were elsewhere, offered Barbara a vague warning. Don't let this escalate, talk it out, and advise everyone to resolve it amicably. Barbara smiled like a predator. Of course, she replied sweetly. We'll move forward in good faith. The following morning, I discovered another 10 yards of fresh gravel, spread entirely within my property line. That very day, I retained a lawyer. My attorney, a steady fellow named Patel, who had encountered every variety of countryside disputes, came out and surveyed the boundary with me. Armed with the county plat, my deed, and a vivid orange surveyor's tape, he confirmed in 10 minutes what I already suspected. Their elegant sidewalk has drifted about 6 feet onto your land, he observed. In that curve toward the creek, he indicated where the crushed stone sliced directly through one of my younger apple rows. That's nowhere near their actual boundary. We submitted a cease and desist letter along with an official trespass complaint to both the sheriff's office and the county zoning department. Then Patel delivered the quiet revelation that Barbara had completely overlooked. Additionally, he noted, it appears they never obtained permits for this walkway. He was absolutely correct. The county mandates permits and inspections for any permanent paved community trail near a drainage zone. None were on record. In their pursuit of enhanced community walkability, what Maple Hollow had actually done was construct a concrete and gravel path partially on property they didn't own, too close to a protected creek, without any permits or erosion control measures, which meant, in the county's view, the HOA had just created an unlawful structure. Code enforcement arrived 3 days later, equipped with clipboards and high-visibility vests. The inspector walked the length of the path, stepped across my survey pin, scowled deeply, and took extensive notes. Barbara hovered behind him like an indignant flamingo. This is outlined in our master plan, she repeated. It's nearly complete. The inspector eventually turned to face her. Your HOA's jurisdiction stops at your recorded boundaries, he stated firmly. You cannot approve building on land you don't own, and you certainly can't place impermeable surfaces near a creek without proper permits. Barbara attempted to shift tactics. We have an implied easement, she announced. The orchard has historically been open to public access. We're simply making it official. I couldn't help but laugh aloud. Ma'am, the only people I've ever implied access to are paying customers who visit during open hours, and don't treat my rows like a labyrinth, I replied. And I definitely didn't invite a concrete procession. The inspector handed Maple Hollow a stop work order immediately and affixed a vivid red violation notice to the fence. Barbara acted as if the notice was merely advisory. Within a week, I spotted new tire tracks and additional gravel dumped under cover of darkness clearly placed when they assumed no one was looking. So, Patel did what attorneys do when clients confused stop with accelerate. He rushed us to court for an emergency temporary restraining order and began preparing a comprehensive lawsuit for trespass, damages, and permanent injunctive relief. That's when Barbara finally grasped that she might face real consequences. Her reaction wasn't remorse. Her reaction was to escalate to the ultimate HOA maneuver. Maple Hollow Estates launched its own lawsuit against me. The HOA's filing was an astonishing showcase of overreach and sloppy legal work. They asserted that the community held a prescriptive right to traverse my property because residents had long enjoyed strolling near the orchard. In plain terms, a few joggers had occasionally used my gravel shoulder, and now they believed that granted ownership. They further argued that my orchard functioned as a quasi-public amenity they had promoted on their website. Obstructing the walkway which they had constructed was disrupting their residents' quality of life. The court should compel me to provide a permanent easement and eliminate any obstructions, specifically my newly poured concrete wall. Patel reviewed the complaint twice, then courteously phoned opposing counsel to inquire if he was truly serious. Evidently, he was. All right, Patel responded. Let's proceed to discovery. Discovery for Maple Hollow proved to be a nightmare. We demanded all HOA board minutes discussing the walkway, every communication regarding the orchard and my property, all promotional materials referencing orchard access, and any permits or evidence of their absence for the construction. We received minutes capturing Barbara stating things like, once we build it, he'll have to permit access. He won't want to appear as the villain. We uncovered emails where a board member questioned, "Do we actually possess an easement?" And Barbara answered, "It's community space, obviously." We obtained a newsletter bragging, "Soon you'll be able to wander directly into our charming neighboring orchard," complete with a stock photo of an entirely unrelated orchard, and not a single permit. Patel also moved to join the county and the drainage district as interested parties, since the HOA had spread gravel, altered grading near the creek, and tampered with the culvert that wasn't theirs. The county's attorney became involved, and believe me, nothing erases an HOA's smugness faster than discovering that the entities capable of imposing substantial fines and mandating actual demolition are now upset with them. Maple Hollow's insurance provider grew anxious. Their general liability carrier dispatched a firm letter. "Your policy excludes coverage for intentional trespass or unpermitted building on property you do not own." In other words, if this turned sour, the HOA's reserve fund funded by resident dues would bear the cost. Meanwhile, I constructed my wall entirely within my boundaries, fully permitted and approved by an engineer. It was classified as a retaining and security feature. To the HOA, it represented the Berlin Wall. Residents began to realize that their prized new scenic trail now ended suddenly at a plain gray barrier, adorned with bright county stop work and violation tags, and was the focus of increasingly frantic emails. The storyline changed. Several Maple Hollow homeowners stopped by the orchard stand, looking sheepish. "We didn't know they hadn't asked you," one woman admitted. "We assumed you were collaborating." "Collaboration generally requires agreement," I pointed out. Patel submitted a counterclaim larger than my barn, alleging trespass, nuisance, crop damage, and seeking injunctions, compensatory damages, and attorney fees. He included an entertaining claim for slander of title, stemming from their public assertion that my land was community access. Abruptly, the HOA wasn't the sole litigant they were being countersued, with the county glaring disapprovingly in the background. At the hearing, Maple Hollow's lawyer attempted to reframe their unlawful sidewalk as a simple oversight, and my orchard as a semi-public boundary zone. The judge, a straightforward woman named Ramirez who had been raised on a farm, wasn't persuaded. Patel began with fundamentals. He projected the county plat on a screen, encircled the HOA limits in red, then outlined my parcel in blue. The constructed walkway appeared as a gray serpent slinking directly across the line into my trees. "Your Honor," he declared, laser pointer unwavering, "everything in gray beyond this red line belongs to my client. There is no recorded easement. There is no dedication. There is only an HOA board that redefined community as whatever they desired." The HOA's counsel countered with implied permission, asserting residents had traditionally walked through the orchard. Patel presented a photographic timeline of my no trespassing and orchard operation signs spanning the past decade, plus a pre-Walkway Maple Hollow newsletter where Barbara instructed residents to honor the orchard's private property signs, acknowledging they recognized it as private. When the HOA's lawyer pivoted to Barbara's preferred term, community expectations, insisting buyers were promised walkable nature access, and that the orchard was essential to their lifestyle, with the path being a minor encroachment for greater good, Patel interjected, and yet, they never consulted the owner of that essential lifestyle element before breaking ground on his topsoil and slicing his fence. We displayed images of the severed fence panel, skid steer ruts through saplings, and the irrigation line mangled beneath their gravel. Then the county inspector testified, no permit had been granted for any trail extending beyond the HOA's parcel. The HOA violated creek setback regulations. Their work threatened erosion into the waterway. Judge Ramirez's eyebrow arched at the term violation. Then Patel revealed the board minutes, projected for all to see were Barbara's exact words. "If we initiate the path and encourage resident use, it will be more difficult for him to refuse later. Worst case, we handle fines. The community benefit justifies it." The judge looked up deliberately. "Miss Keen," she addressed, "did you author these statements?" Barbara gulped. "Those remarks are out of context," she replied uneasily. "What context?" the judge pressed. "Makes worst case, we handle fines acceptable when discussing deliberate construction on someone else's land. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Ramirez reclined slightly. This is how it appears to me, she concluded. And HOA desired a new amenity. It didn't own the necessary land. It knew it didn't own the land. It waste-built regardless, then sued the owner when he protested. She stared straight at the HOA's side. That isn't a misunderstanding. That is hubris. She issued her ruling immediately. The HOA's easement claim was denied. Their suit was dismissed with prejudice. My counterclaim for trespass and damages was approved. I would receive reimbursement for crop losses, restoration expenses, and legal fees. The HOA was directed to dismantle every foot of trail on my property at their cost and rehabilitate the area to its original state under county oversight. Then she delivered the final flourish. Considering the deliberate character of this trespass and the effort to coerce Mr. Dempsey, I'm also awarding punitive damages. Homeowners associations are not sovereign entities, Miss Keene. You cannot annex a man's orchard simply because you appreciate the scenery. Barbara turned ashen. Someone in the gallery, almost certainly a Maple Hollow resident, muttered softly, "Oh my God," as if witnessing a decisive penalty kick veer disastrously wide.